Long ago, in a quiet village called Omalu, there was a tree that no one dared to cut, touch, or even lay on. It was not the biggest tree in the village. It was not the tallest, but it was the most feared. Because the tree could talk, they called it Okato tree. Nobody planted it. Nobody remembered when it started growing. It had always been there, near the edges of the village, where the forest meets the farmland. Its thick was wide like the body of three men. Its roots punched out of the earth like the arms of an old gallant, and its leaves were always green, even during dry season. But the strongest thing about the okata tree was not how it looked, it was how it whispered. The first person to hear it was a young girl named Maku. She was 7 years old when it happened. She had been sent to pick snails near the bush paths, just behind the trees. The sun was setting, and the birds were singing their evening songs. As she bent down to collect a big snail, she heard a voice. It was not a man's voice, not a woman's. It was deep and soft, like wind passing through a air. Mocha, it said. She looked around. No one was there. She stood up and stepped back. Muka, go home. This time the voice was louder. She screamed and ran back to the village, dropping her snail baskets. When she told her mother, the woman slapped her gently and said, don't play with spirits. But the girl was shaking. She could not sleep that night. Later that week, a large bunch broke and fell to the ground. The next morning, goat refused to pass near it. Birds stayed away from its tops. The tree stood silent. That was when the elders came together. They called a meeting and sent for the oldest man in the village, Onyema, who was over 100 years old. He came slowly, walking with a stick made from iron wood. When they asked him about the Okanta tree, he sat down, looked into the sky, and said, Ha, so it has started again. The elders learned it. What do you mean? He nodded slowly. He was only a small boy when my own grandfather told me this story. He said the Okanta tree has a spirit inside, not an evil spirit, but not a kind one either. It speaks only when danger is coming, and it speaks only to those who can listen. The village fell silent. The chief asked, so what must we do? Onyema shook his head. You do not cut it. You do not touch it. You listen. That night, the air in Omalu felt stranger, like something was watching. The moon rose, but it was red like palm oil. Women gathered their children inside earlier. Men came back from the bush with fear in their eyes. The next morning, a boy named Obinna went missing. He had gone to fetch firewood in the same forest behind the tree. When he did not return, the villagers searched for him From morning to night, they'll find his slippers near the Okanta tree and nothing more. That was when the whisper started again. This time, not just to one person. Different villagers began to hear their voice in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, sometimes in dreams. Listen, the land is crying. The tree remembers. Blood was spread here and it must be washed. The elders gathered once more. They called for cleansing. They brought a white goat to the tree and poured palm oil and salt at its roots. But the voice did not stop. In the days that followed, more things happened. One woman said it heard the tree weeping in the night. Another said it saw it shaking when there was no wind. A hunter returned from the forest said he saw Obina standing by the tree, but the boy's eyes were empty. Then, one morning, Muko, now older and brave, decided to go alone and sit under a tree. She sat across, placed her hands on her laps, and said softly, I'm not afraid, talk to me. At first, nothing happened, but then a soft breeze moved through the leaves. The tree spoke, Muka, your ears are clean, you can hear me. Listen. She sits still. The voice was not loud, but it felt like it was coming from inside her chest. Long ago, this land was full of peace, but something was buried, something that should have been given to the river. Muka frowned. What was buried? The tree replied, A child, a child of mother, a child of water, killed, buried in secret. The spirit never left. She ran back to the village and told the chief. The chief called Onyema again. The old man looked afraid for the first time. He whispered, It is true. It was hidden. Long ago, there was a girl, strange child. She never cried, never felt sick. The elders feared her. They said she was not a child of man. One day she died mysteriously. Some said she was poisoned. She was buried at the roots of the tree because they feared her soul would return. The village gasped. Muka stood and said, That is why the tree is speaking now. The spirit is not at rest. The next morning, the entire village stood at the tree. No one spoke. Even the wind was silent, like it was holding a breath. Onyema held his staff with both hands. Shaking, the chief wear a red cloth and white chalk on his face. Moka stood behind him, her heart beating fast. They had come to do what had never been done in Omalu village. They came to drag. Men with cutlass and hoes stood ready, but none of them moved. They were afraid to touch the root of the talking tree. Then the voice came again, soft but clear. Dig with respect, dig with roots, or the land will bleed. Onyema closed his eyes and raised both hands. We hear you, O Cancer Tree. We came with clean hands. We came to do what was left undone. One of the young men, Kelechi, stepped forward and began to dig. The soil was soft. After the third dig, Kelechi hole hit something hard. The village gasped. He dropped the hole and used his hand to clear the dirt. He found bones, small bones, the shape of a child. On the cloth was a strange mark, a snake. Onyema, with tears in his eyes, looked at the bones. We must take her to the river, he said. That is where her spirit belongs.